There's been a lot of focus over the past few days since the earnings came out on what happens with Facebook, the app itself. But the fact that the family of apps growth is also trending much, much slower makes me think that perhaps Instagram is also starting to flatline.
Hey gang, it's Thursday, February 10th. Debbie and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Mountain. I'm Marcus. Today I'm joined by our principal analyst who covers everything social media. It's Deborah Aho-Williamson.
Oh, hey, Marcus.
Debbie, hello. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Today's fact: the most dangerous animal that ever lived is... Any guesses, Debbie?
I'm going to say the blue whale.
Oh, interesting. I immediately think shark. You should never dive with... You know people who dive with sharks? You know, maniacs who dive with sharks? It just blows my mind that that's a thing people want to do. But sharks are responsible for no human deaths at all. But for some reason I shouldn't have watched 47 meters down. Anyway, the real answer is the mosquito. And it's not even close. Mosquitoes, they're responsible. This is staggering. Mosquitoes are responsible for the death of half the human beings who've ever lived. 45 billion people. People estimate, probably science people, but they estimate, according to the Population Reference Bureau estimates, that there's probably been about 107 billion people ever on the planet Earth. And mosquitoes are responsible for killing half of them because they carry a lot of potentially fatal diseases: malaria, yellow fever, dengue fever, a bunch of things I can't pronounce. And nobody had any idea that mosquitoes were dangerous until the end of the 19th century. 1877, a British doctor called Sir Patrick Manson was the one who proved that they could be deadly. And then 17 years later, it occurred to him that malaria might be caused by mosquitoes. And then a bunch of work on trying to stem the impact of these mosquitoes started. But mosquitoes, they're the worst. Why do they exist? We have no need for them.
I love your facts, but this one is interesting and troubling. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I hate mosquitoes too. I'm one of those people who, if I'm in a group of people, the mosquitoes are going to all flock to me. Like, I'll have 17 bites and everybody else will have none. So
we need to hang out more, Debbie, because I am that person normally. So we need to spend more time hanging out so that they maybe leave me alone for a second. I feel your pain. Oh, they're the worst. Anyway, today's real topic. How concerned should we be about Facebook? So Debbie, we're talking about Facebook today. We have to. And the headlines kind of said it all. Facebook is shrinking, noted Shirin Ghaffari of Recode. Facebook users drop while Metaverse runs up a tab, wrote Sarah Fisher of Axios. And Meta shares dove 20% after they reported their Q4 earnings. That wiped about $232 billion from the technology giant's market value. What does that even mean? Well, it means that it was the biggest one-day decline for a stock in US history. So it's not great. Debbie will go through their user highlights and their revenue highlights. We'll talk about what Facebook's immediate future might look like for the rest of this year. But let's start with the user highlights. Over 1.9 billion people worldwide use Facebook every day. That's a quarter of all the people in the world. But Facebook lost close to 1 million daily users in Q4, the first decline ever. In Q3, they had added the population of Florida in new users, 22 million, and then 30 million they'd added in Q2, 33 in Q1. So going chronologically, went 33 million added, 30, 22, and then a 1 million decline. Also, Debbie, by region, Facebook added a small number of daily active users in Europe and APAC, but they lost them in North America and the rest of the world. So Debbie, we'll start with just overall take on the user figure. The user growth figures for Facebook in Q4 were blank.
I think you set it up pretty well. My word, I would say, is flatlining. And, so, just to set the stage, Facebook and the Facebook family of apps are still absolutely enormous, right? You have to put it in perspective. There are more people who use Facebook than just about anything I can think of, on the planet. And they have always been growing. So the flatlining part, I think, is concerning. And, if you look at the family of apps, so this is the metric that they put out that includes people who visited any of its properties. So Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, or Messenger. The growth there was just 10 million from Q3 to Q4, down from 50 million between Q2 and Q3. And so that's interesting to me because that includes everything. So it's not just a Facebook. There's been a lot of focus over the past few days since the earnings came out on what happens with Facebook, the app itself or the service itself. But the fact that the family of apps growth is also trending much, much slower makes me think that perhaps Instagram is also starting to flatline. Facebook does not reveal Instagram figures, but I kind of wonder if hidden in those numbers is something going on with Instagram that should be investigated.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, why did they flatline? What's going on? Facebook said, number one, we believe competitive services are negatively impacting growth, particularly with younger audiences. TikTok, they mentioned them a couple of times. Number two, they said internet data prices in India have increased, which is a big market I think the biggest market for Facebook, considering they're banned in China. But Debbie, a lot of different figures here in this earnings, which were concerning. The most interesting user figure for you this quarter was blank.
That was the fact that Facebook lost its daily active users in Q4 on a worldwide basis for the very first time. But in particular, within those figures, I also want to call out this decline that they experienced in what Facebook calls rest of world, which includes Latin America, Middle East, and Africa, and flatness in Asia Pacific. So if you kind of rewind back a few years, all of these regions have been really central to the growth of Facebook. So we've known for a while that the number of people in the US and Canada hasn't been increasing all that much. Europe, kind of a similar story. So the story of the past couple of years has been, hey, Facebook, but Facebook is still growing in this area and this area and this area, but now it's not. And so that has led us to say in our forecasts that while Facebook posted double-digit gains in 2020 in regions like the Middle East and Africa, Asia Pacific, and Central and Eastern Europe, we're expecting growth in all those regions to now fall into the low single digits this year.
Yes, that's absolutely what jumped out to me as well, because this is not the first time that Facebook has lost daily active users in North America. It's the first time they've lost them overall. To your point, Facebook has had 195 million users in North America since Q1 2020. And it still does today. But to your point, the rest of the world falling 3 million is particularly concerning. And then on the monthly active users front as well, they slammed into a wall. Total monthly active users, each of the previous 11 quarters, the additions in MAUs total for Facebook since Q1 of 2019 goes 55 million added that quarter, 39, 35, 49, 105, 98, 39, 57, 56, pretty healthy, right? 42, 15 in Q3. So a drop there and then 2 in Q4. So that's also concerning. Debbie, put a grade on Facebook's Q4 user highlights.
So actually, I'm going to do 2 grades. One for daily growth. Sorry.
Oh, nice. No. We love that.
One for daily growth and one for monthly. On the daily basis, I'd have to give it a D for decline.
Oh, D.
Yeah.
It's fair.
I love alliteration. So, on a monthly basis, I'm going to give it a C. No alliteration there, but just really for sharply slowing momentum.
Yeah, I like that. All right, let's move to revenue highlights. Facebook made over $32 billion in Q4. Somewhat of a different story here. A 20% jump on last Q4. Nearly half of that money made, 46% still comes from North America. That was up 15%. So Debbie, the revenue growth figures for Q4 for Facebook were blank.
They were right about where we expected them to be. I do have to give kudos to our forecasters. Well, we don't publish quarterly estimates of revenue for companies. We do publish them on an annual basis. But internally, what we thought that Facebook would do in Q4 is pretty much what Facebook ended up doing. And that led our annual forecast for Facebook to be almost exactly what Facebook, or what Meta, pardon me, I call it Facebook, but I have to rewind and say,
I know.
I've been following this company since 2006, and it's been Facebook for how many years, and it's been Meta for how many months. So Meta's total ad revenue came in at about, 115 billion. Our forecast was 114 billion.
Yeah.
Kudos to our forecasters. I think they nailed this one.
Yep, absolutely. There was a bunch of figures in here. I mean, we mentioned the 33 billion in Q4. There was the 20% growth. If you look by region, North America, 15 billion, 15% growth. The most interesting revenue figure, Debbie, this quarter for you was blank.
So I'm actually going to say the most interesting figure has nothing to do with what happened in Q4. It's
nice.
Throwing you a curveball. It's what Meta said is going to happen, or what it thinks it's going to happen in Q1 of this year.
Okay.
This is the figure really that I think led to a lot of the speculation. The stock price decline really raised a lot of concern among the community, the ad community, the investor community, Facebook watchers, Meta watchers. So what did they say? Meta said their Q1 outlook for revenue growth will be just 3% to 11% year over year. So by comparison, so this is why I think it's such a monumental thing. In Q1 2021, revenue increased 48% year over year. Now, a lot of that was way better than expected performance in the, after a tough early pandemic quarter in comparison. But still, if you look back to Q1 2020, revenue was up 18% year over year. So this is the big concerning thing. And Facebook Meta put a lot of reasons behind it. They said they are going to blame it on slowing impression growth due to competition from other platforms and a shift of engagement towards video on their platforms, which doesn't monetize as well as feed or stories. They also mentioned ad targeting and measurement challenges, these same ongoing challenges that we've heard about for the past couple of quarters as a result of Apple's iOS changes. Then they referred to macroeconomic challenges for advertisers, including cost inflation and supply chain disruptions. And then finally, they mentioned foreign currency exchange rates. So that's a whole heck of a lot of headwinds. Meta talks about headwinds all the time on their earnings calls, but what's ahead of them, I think, in Q1 is probably bigger and more substantial than they've ever faced before.
Yeah. And to kind of zoom in on that point, Apple's new newish ad tracking privacy restrictions that limit Meta's ability to sell ads. CFO David Wayner said the company expects the Apple policy to cost it over $10 billion in lost sales this year, 2022, equivalent to about 8% of its total revenue last year. And just to reiterate those Q4 revenue growth figures and how much they changed from last Q4, 31% last Q4 to 20% this year. Overall, North America revenue in Q4 cut in half last year, 31% in Q4 and 15% this year for North America. Debbie, a grade, if you will, for Facebook's revenue figures in Q4.
So once again, I'm going to give you two.
Okay, nice.
One grade for Q4 in the full year of 2021.
Okay.
I'm going to give it a B. They met our expectations. Didn't outperform. That would have given them an A. So I'm going to give them a B for full year 2021. But for the outlook for Q1, I'm verging on a C-D here.
Wow.
I'm waffling a bit because it's possible they could overperform slightly like they did in Q1 of 2021. They might end up pulling something out that is better than expectations, but that remains to be seen. Like I mentioned, there's just a whole heck of a lot of things standing in Meta's way right now.
Right. So full year, 37% growth, Facebook ad revenues, Meta ad revenues, and we had predicted 36%. So we're right on the money in terms of what last year looked like. Debbie, what do our forecasters expect from Meta this year, 2022?
Yeah. So the forecast, so we're in the process of updating our numbers now. So speaking about our forecast from late last year, we estimated that worldwide ad revenue for Meta would be 135 billion, up about 18%. I can't speak for where we're going to land in our new numbers. I'm sure the forecasters are working on that feverishly as we speak. But my initial take is that they could reach that, but it's going to be a struggle.
Okay. Final thing I wanted to mention is just the other part of their business, which hit profitability. Meta's Reality Labs division makes the VR goggles, smart glasses, other products. They lost over $10 billion in 2021 as they try to build out this metaverse space. So that's all we got time for the lead story. It's time now for the halftime report. Deborah, we talked about a lot here, maybe one takeaway and then also an overall grade, if you will, for Facebook in Q4.
One takeaway, flatlining. User growth flatlining, revenue expectations for Q1, not that exciting. I'm just going to say that word. And then as far as a grade, yeah, C seems about right.
Yeah, it does. On the money. All right, time now for In Other News, but first a quick word from our sponsor, Mountain. What if launching a streaming TV ad campaign was as easy as posting on social media? With Mountain, it is. Their marketing software solution offers an easy way to buy, manage, and measure connected TV campaigns. Ads are served exclusively on premium streaming networks and apps and optimized by automated media buying technology to ensure ads are served to the right viewer at the right time to prompt website visits and conversions. Visit mountain.com to learn more. Right, folks, we are back today in other news. Social commerce is booming, and Instagram tests Instagram subscriptions. Story 1. Social commerce is booming, but consumer distrust still lingers, writes Insider Intelligence analyst Daniel Konstantinovich. He points out that a new report from Accenture predicts social commerce will grow 3 times as fast as traditional e-commerce, more than doubling from $500 billion in 2021 to 1.2 trillion 2025. Daniel continues by saying Accenture estimates Gen Z and millennial consumers will account for 62% of global social commerce expenditures by 2025, when social will account for 17% of all e-commerce spending. But platforms' enthusiasm for social commerce hasn't been matched by consumers, Daniel writes, who are worried that services won't be as reliable as traditional e-commerce retailers. Debbie, consumers' current feelings about social commerce are blank.
The word I would use there is mixed. Okay. So just to back up here, I think the big question about the growth of social commerce has to do with how you define it. And I think there is absolutely no question that, and this has been true for a long time, that social media does influence purchase behavior. Influencers do, friends and family posting things do, things like that. Where I think is more challenging to figure out is to what extent do social platforms convince consumers to complete those purchases on the social platforms, as opposed to, I heard about this from a friend and I'm going to go visit this website and do it there. Yep. And so there's a lot of kind of semantics going on here when you're talking about social commerce growth. I definitely think it's gaining attention. Our own numbers show that. We did a survey middle of last year that found that 48% of U.S. internet users said that they've made a purchase via a social platform in the past 12 months, either by clicking through to a link or directly on the app or site. But other research shows that the percentage that actually complete those purchases on the app is a lot lower. So that's where I think is an interesting one. For sure, social commerce is huge when you talk about it broadly. How big it's getting and how much it's growing, if you think about it specifically on an app, that's a much harder thing.
Yeah, that's fair. Story 2. Instagram is testing Instagram subscriptions, a feature that would enable users to access exclusive content from creators in exchange for a monthly fee, says the company, notes Insider Intelligence analyst Rachel Wolf. Creators decide how much they want to charge, between $1 to $100 a month, and subscribers in turn get 3 main benefits, Rachel notes. Number 1, access to exclusive lives. Number 2, the ability to access and share exclusive stories and interactive story stickers. Number 3, subscriber badges that help creators focus on these users' messages and comments. Debbie, the likelihood of social media subscriptions catching on is blank.
I would say mild,
Okay.
particularly mild growth. So, okay, well, I think that for the largest creators, the ones that are most popular, who already are have huge follower bases, a certain number of people will subscribe to get extra content from them, to get something special, maybe a sneak peek of a product or some content that is only for them. Everybody else who's a creator who maybe isn't one of those major creators is going to have a hard time bringing in significant subscription revenue. So I actually think that the prospect of having subscriptions is going to kind of bifurcate the creator community. So you're going to have larger creators that have multiple revenue streams and increasingly larger revenue streams from things that are not influencer marketing. And then you're going to have creators with smaller followings that are going to be even more reliant on influencer marketing, sponsorship deals to pay the bills. And I think that for marketers, the more that these larger creators start relying on subscription revenue, the less they're going to want to do deals with brands. So brands are going to be forced to start to look at creators with smaller followings to continue doing sponsored posts.
Mm-hmm. That's all we've got time for. Debbie, thank you so much for hanging out today.
Well, thank you.
Of course. Thank you to Victoria. She edits the show. And thank you to everyone listening. We'll see you guys tomorrow, hopefully, for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Mountain.